Actually, you know what? There's been quite a few shows that we actually haven't discussed. Television shows that rotted the minds of the younger generation, just completely rotted out the minds and resulted in what we have here today. And of course, there is a lot of lag on YouTube. All right, let's see here. What is going on here? Okay. So, there's quite a few TV shows that have rotted out the minds in the 90s and early 2000s. You had Dawson's Creek, of course, James Van Der Beek passing, unfortunately, recently. It is unknown whether he was quaxinated, although apparently his wife was anti-quacks. And 90210 I've mentioned many times. I actually think 90210 may have been the beginning of the end. Just the celebration of materialism, you know, the rich kids, the populars, the indulging of narcissism, the popular kids. The kids, were they from, was Brandon Walsh and Brenda Walsh, were they from Minnesota? For some reason, Minnesota comes to mind. Somewhere around, either Minnesota or somewhere around there, from the middle of the country. And they go out to California and the narcissist lifestyle there. And just the normalization of promiscuity and degeneracy in high school. Not even college, in high school. And I mean, way back in the day, I mean, you probably have to go all the way back to the 60s and 70s, maybe early 80s. There was actually class in college as well, not just high school. Now, obviously, there was some degeneracy, but nowhere near. There wasn't the normalization of the degeneracy. It wasn't normalized and celebrated the way it started to be in. Some people say it was the 80s, but I don't know how widespread it was in the 80s, because in the 80s, TV shows still had, like, family values. They had class. They weren't flat out celebrating degeneracy the way the 90s did. Now, obviously, not every single kid watched this show. So, like, just because shows start to air doesn't mean the seep into the culture is going to bog it down into that cesspool. That's going to take many, many years. We're seeing the effects of that now. And my mark of delineation, which was 2011. And so perhaps the Mayans were correct, and the new age started 2012. The transition of the age. And then there was also Melrose Place, which I never watched. So I don't know. They were older people, right? But yeah, I mean, degeneracy similar to Sex in the City, or no? I mean, who watched that show? One Tree Hill, I vaguely remember some commercials. And that was, I believe that was also just the normal rich versus poor with a whole bunch of promiscuity and degeneracy mixed in there. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Dragon Tracer says, aren't you based in California, Bruce? I'm assuming rural NorCal, right? How is it there? No, why would you assume that? Back in the day, I was in LA. And, yeah, I have not disclosed my current location, but it is not California. Perhaps a bunker somewhere. Welcome, Jeff Hunt, the Jazz Cat. Yeah, the E-Jazz, is it the Jazz Cat or the E-Jazz Cat? But either way, Jazz Cat, it was colon cancer, but apparently there were no issues until after vaccine rollout. Because a lot of people have not just cancer, but specifically colon cancer as a result of the vaccines. Allegedly. Les Xylophone says 90108 for our lives to be over. Dragon Tracer wants to talk about lands beyond Antarctica. Clark Rice says, Bruce, can we ever recover from the damage done by Gilmore Girls? Okay. So Gilmore Girls, who has seen my podcast on Gilmore Girls? 2 episodes in the Illuminati psyop known as Gilmore Girls. Season 1 was actually semi-wholesome. But, I mean, that's how they get that's how the Illuminati gets the degeneracy rot into the brains. They start off with some semi-wholesome, semi-genuine, semi-values. Even 90210, season 1, I really don't remember. They probably started it with season 1, but it just got more and more degenerate as the seasons went on. And I think they did that on purpose. Like, even Dawson's Creek, maybe season 1, part of season 1 wasn't incredibly degenerate and promoting promiscuity. But they get the ideas in there, and then the following seasons. Same thing with Friends. I did 1 episode. I was going to do every season and per episode for Friends. But Friends, there was a noticeable shift. I never really watched it, but just, skimming through some of it. Season 1 was also I'm hesitating to use the word wholesome. It wasn't as mean-spirited and negative energy as the following seasons. You can call it Flanderization or whatever you want, but, I mean, a lot of shows kind of seem to become parody of themselves, but there's a certain mean-spiritedness, a certain toxicity seep that occurs throughout the seasons of many shows. I've kind of been noticing this. It's almost like the playbook for TV shows and movies and Hollywood movies is different. There's a different playbook. Welcome, Run Boston Bear. Now, we could talk about anything, but there weren't as many people here right off the bat, which I don't blame them because I didn't have any notice here. Sometimes you just got to roll with the algo. Because sometimes if I schedule it later or even the next day, it'll get real wonky and it won't let me stream it. So sometimes it's easier just to immediately go live. Less chance for glitch. Welcome, Sandra. We could talk about the lands beyond Antarctica. I do want to go over a whole documentary, but that's going to be its own podcast because it's going to be like a 3-hour deep dive. But yeah, so the playbooks were quite different here. Now you have TV shows, they just start off incredibly degenerate right off the bat. But back in the day, yeah, Melrose Place, I have almost no experience. I really don't remember anything about Melrose Place. Did anybody here watch Melrose Place? Can they comment? Pinto Sack says, my mom banned Married with Children in her house. So Married with Children is a very interesting show. Because on one hand, it revealed a lot of what some people would call red pill truths about being married. About female and male psychology. And it was mostly female writers, I think, right? And because would that show ever get made today? But on the other hand, it was mean-spirited. And that was, I think, 80s, right? Did that start in the 80s? Yeah, that was a weird show because on one hand it had so many truths, on the other hand it was mean-spirited. So, wow, 87. I thought it was like 88, 89. 87. Season 1 was 1987. Wow. Yeah, that one's a little bit harder to decipher. I might have to do a whole episode just on Married with Children, because that one's a little bit harder to decipher, although one could postulate that in collapsing the West with all the Illuminati strategies like feminism, anti-family, and anti-children, that could start a subconscious creep over a generation that being married with children isn't all it's cracked up to be, and possibly not want, possibly move away from that. Jeff Hunt says, there is a secret held for the tippy top of these secret societies. I bet it's the determining and breaking of the moral compass. Yeah, there's actually a concept we haven't talked about as much. Actually, you know what? Wow, we might as well go there. We might as well go there. Let's go there. This is MINDSHOCK. I had another episode. I had a part 2 of the Britney Spears conspiracy planned, but there's actually the latest Epstein files drop. I mean, there's so many millions of documents. I mean, I'm gonna be covering plenty more. I'm gonna be covering plenty more on that, including human cloning and all of these. Supposedly, the whole trafficking op, that was one of Epstein's side projects. Notice how part of the disclosure of Epstein might be to kind of pretend it was just this trafficking operation, and that's what's so horrible. But what's really sick and sadistic, that appears to be like 1% of what this scum was into. I mean, this scum was involved in military projects, just biotech projects, genetic engineering, human cloning, perhaps, even of Hollywood celebrities. There's one conspiracy that they cloned Britney Spears and that there's a Britney Spears clone out there who's like 14 or 15 years old at the moment. And obviously, you know, might not want to even think about what they were doing with these clones, how young they were, etc. Just the level of scum and filth knows no limit with these individuals. But the decay of the moral compass, because if Satan seeks to pervert all, is part of the Hollywood gig. Like, part of their Hollywood psyop is to actually get genuine good people and corrupt them. So are there several different groups? Because again, let's not fall false dichotomies here. Now, obviously, there are there's the there are the generational celebrities, you know, possibly born into Satanism, etc. But then there are also the outsiders. Now, Britney might have been MK Ultra and Mickey Mouse Club, etc. But is the reason they want, you know, that's another tough one too, because going through her history, you have Mickey Mouse Club, then there's like a gap. And you see this with several celebrities. So is it possible these scum almost... Actually, we did talk about this. We actually talked about this possibly on the Hollywood Humiliation Rituals episode. Is it possible these scum, like, get a kick out of trying to corrupt, like, the most honorable and genuinely sweet people through Hollyweird without the MK Ultra? So there's people they want to MK Ultra and control that way. And then there's other people, like, their game is to try to corrupt them without the MK Ultra. Is that possible?